The Blue Lantern was one of those places you didn't stumble into by accident. Tucked into a corner of Manhattan's East Village, it was a jazz bar that clung to old-world charm while the city around it screamed neon and digital noise. The wood was worn, the air smelled faintly of whiskey and lemon polish, and the piano in the corner carried the ghosts of 50 years of songs. Emily Carter pulled her apron tight and stepped into the warm light of the bar. It was her third double shift that week. Her sneakers pinched her feet, her hair was pulled back in a messy knot, and the exhaustion on her face was hidden behind the default smile of the service industry, polite, professional, invisible. She didn't want to be seen, not tonight, not ever. But someone was about to see her. At the VIP table near the stage sat Victor Hale, the billionaire nobody ever called by his first name. He was Hale, just Hale. To the business pages, he was the ruthless shark who bought and broke media companies like they were poker chips. To the staff at the Blue Lantern, he was the man who never smiled, who tipped generously but spoke like every word cost him more than the cash. Tonight, he was in a tux, his fiancée Claudia Bennett by his side, her phone tilted just so for the perfect Instagram angle. Champagne, diamond earrings, the skyline behind them. Emily kept her eyes down as she cleared a nearby table. She hated when the rich came here. They treated the bar like a zoo exhibit. Look at the quaint little jazz den, isn't it charming? They never understood the place. For her, the Blue Lantern was more than a job. It was the closest thing to home she had left. The pianist had just ended his set, and a low playlist filled the pause. The melody that drifted from the speakers wasn't anything special to the casual ear, just a soft, almost forgotten tune, but Emily knew it. Her throat caught before she could stop it. Without thinking, she hummed along quiet, just under her breath as she stacked glasses. 8 notes, that was all. At the Hale table, the billionaire's hand froze halfway through lifting his glass of scotch. The amber liquid tilted against the rim but did not spill. His gray eyes cut across the room, sharp and searching, like a man hearing his own name whispered in a crowd. Emily realized too late that she'd made a sound. She bit her lip, cheeks heating, and turned her back. But it was too late. Victor Hale's voice cut through the low chatter of the room. "Waitress." Emily stiffened, tray in hand. She turned slowly, meeting the gaze of the man who could buy and sell her entire life with the stroke of a pen. "Yes, sir." Her voice was steady, professional. His eyes narrowed. "That melody, where did you learn it?" Emily blinked. "I'm sorry." "The song you just hummed." He leaned forward, elbows on the table, ignoring Claudia's raised brow. "Where did you hear it?" Emily's heart stuttered. She wanted to lie. She wanted to say she didn't know what he was talking about, but the words slipped out before she could catch them. "My father, he used to play it when I was little." Victor's jaw tightened, the muscles shifting like tectonic plates beneath skin. Claudia tilted her head, feigning curiosity for her audience of followers, though her phone was still discreetly recording. "What's the title?" Hal asked. Emily shook her head. "I don't think it had one. It was just something he played when the house felt too heavy, when things were hard." His glass touched the table with a soft click. "That song does not belong in this room." The words landed like a slap, not loud, not angry, but final. Emily swallowed, forcing herself to stand tall, though every instinct screamed to retreat. "I didn't mean any offense, sir." For a long moment, Victor said nothing. His gaze lingered on her face, as if memorizing features he wasn't supposed to recognize. Then he waved her away with a flick of his fingers, the kind of dismissal only the very powerful could master. Emily nodded and turned, moving quickly toward the bar. Her hands trembled as she set the tray down. What was that? Why did that song matter to him? She tried to shake it off, but when she reached for a napkin, she found something tucked beneath the folded linen she had set at the hill table. A business card, heavy black with silver lettering that gleamed under the dim light. Hale Media, private number. Emily froze, the card burning against her palm. Across the room, Victor Hale lifted his glass again, this time without a tremor. His fiancée whispered something in his ear, her smile sharp as glass. He didn't answer her. his eyes, just for a heartbeat, flicked back to Emily. And in that moment, she understood one thing with absolute clarity. She was not invisible anymore. Delay equals ones. The apartment on the Lower East Side had two windows that never quite closed and a radiator that hissed like an angry cat. On winter nights, the pipes sang. On summer nights, the neighbors did. Tonight, the apartment was quiet in that thin, brittle way that felt like it could shatter if anyone breathed too hard. Emily slid her key into the lock and shouldered the door open, arms full of takeout containers, a pharmacy bag, and a second-hand denim jacket she wasn't sure why she still owned. The hallway light flickered once and steadied. Inside the small living room was a collage of carefully maintained survival. A thrift store couch, a wobbly coffee table scarred with ring stains, a keyboard on a folding stand, and a one-eyed stuffed bear slumped in the corner like a retired boxer. The voice from the bedroom was small and scratchy. "I'm here," she called, letting the door click shut. "Don't get up, I've got soup." She nudged the light switch with her elbow. Nothing. "Try again." The ceiling bulb gave a resentful glow and stayed. She dropped the jacket, kicked off her shoes, and set the bags on the counter. A prescription bottle rattled against the laminate with the sound of cheap hope. In the bedroom, Daniel lay propped up on pillows, a paperback face down on his chest. 17 and long-limbed, he had the kind of haunted beauty movies put on posters to sell sadness. A nasal cannula trailed to the portable concentrator at the bedside. The machine hummed a steady, comforting note, like a refrigerator pretending to be a lullaby. "You look like you wrestled a tornado of receipts," he said, squinting at her with a grin he didn't quite have the energy to fully wear. "Lost," Emily said deadpan. "Tragic defeat. The receipts pinned me in round 3. She held up the pharmacy bag. "But I scored these, got the refill approved." He nodded relief, a soft exhale. "You eat." "Working on it." She cracked open the soup, handed him the spoon, and sat on the edge of the bed. "How's the heart?" "Present," he said, "in a complicated relationship with oxygen." "Tell it to commit." She smoothed his hair back, checking the color in his face. "Any dizziness?" "Not now." He angled the spoon like a conductor's baton. "So, the Blue Lantern, did you survive the T-Rex?" "Do you mean the billionaire or the rabbi special?" "Both." Emily told him most of it. The tuxedos, the tipsy hedge fund philosopher who tried to explain crypto to the bartender, the pianist bailing early. She did not mention humming. She did not mention the glass of scotch that froze in a rich man's hand or the business card that now lived, too heavy, in the pocket of her apron. Those pieces were still sharp inside her. She hadn't figured out how to touch them without bleeding. "He was there?" Daniel asked, eyes widening. "Hail, like Hell Media hail." "Yeah. Huh? Did he drop any diamonds on the floor? We could, sweep." "He dropped a vibe," she said, "an expensive one." "Gross." He took another spoon of soup and winced. "Hot." "Welcome to soup." She stood and crossed to the small desk by the window, where an old metronome sat between stacks of unpaid bills. It had been their father's once. The wood was nicked and dulled with years, the brass pendulum scratched by nervous thumbs. Emily wound it and set it gently ticking on the nightstand. "Too loud?" she asked. "Never," he said. "It's like it keeps the room together." She knew exactly what he meant. As kids, when storms rolled through and the old building rattled and every siren in Manhattan decided to sing at once, their father would wind the metronome and set it on the table. The heartbeat of it filled the gaps between all the other noises. It turned chaos into tempo. The concentrator hummed, the metronome clicked. For a moment, the room found a rhythm that felt almost like peace. Daniel's phone buzzed. He ignored it. Emily pulled hers out to check the time. A new message lit her screen from an unknown number. "Good evening, Miss Carter. This is Mara from Hale Media. Mr. Hale would like to extend a professional opportunity. Please confirm availability for a brief meeting at 10:30 a.m. tomorrow at Hale Tower. Car service can be arranged." Emily stared. The text wasn't a question so much as a velvet rope being raised. She heard the voice again. "That song does not belong in this room. Then the invisible addendum, but you do, if I say so. Spam? Daniel asked around a tiny smile. Kind of the opposite, she said. He frowned when she told him, that's not normal. Billionaires aren't normal, she said. They're walking exceptions. Are you going? I don't know. Do you want to? She had no answer for that. Want was a luxury most days. What she had were needs stacked like boxes in a narrow hallway. Rent, copay, groceries, bus pass. In that looming, sacred word the cardiologist said softly across a desk, surgery. Her phone buzzed again. We understand this is short notice. Please reply YN. Daniel lifted his eyebrows. That escalated quickly. Emily typed, delighted, typed again. If I go, it's 15 minutes. I can be home by noon to take you to the clinic. He tipped his head. I can Uber. And listened to a driver complain about Yankee stats. I wouldn't do that to you. Red Sox, actually, he said, and she made a face like he'd sworn in church. He reached for her hand. His fingers were cold. Come on, you're not going to combust in a lobby. If they offer you something that helps, take it. If they pull anything creepy, leave. Simple. She wanted to say it's not simple, because it was. Because when Victor Hale looked at her in that bar, it felt like a door creaking open in a house she didn't know she lived in. Because 8 notes could turn a life. Because the business card in her apron felt less like an invitation and more like a summons. She typed Y and hit send. Daniel looked pleased. Call me when you get there. Use the code word if they try to replace you with a robot. What's the code word? Lasagna. It's universally disarming. She laughed, the sound surprising her. Deal. He glanced at the keyboard by the window. Play for me. She hesitated. The keys were dusted. The sustained pedal squeaked, and still, there it was, the other half of herself waiting. She sat on the folding chair and placed her fingers lightly on the plastic, the cheap action clicking under her fingertips, a C major chord, then another. She kept it simple, a lullaby of block chords and open fifths and little turns that made Daniel's breathing slow. Sing it, he murmured, eyes closed. She shook her head. Not tonight. Okay, he whispered, another time. He drifted, the soup cooling on the tray, the metronome still keeping measure. Emily watched him sleep the way you watch a candle near a curtain, lovingly and with fear. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from her bank. Deposit 84 cents. She snorted. The city had a sense of humor. She stood, turned the metronome off, and padded to the kitchen to clean up. The night outside the window was a glittering lie. Everything looked beautiful from far away. Up close, she could count cracks in the paint. In Hill Tower, 40 blocks uptown, someone else stared at a crack. Hairline thin in a pane of glass the building's insurer would insist was flawless. Victor Hale stood in his office with the lights off, the city's reflection a broken mosaic across the windows. He held a small cassette recorder in his hand, the kind reporters stopped using a decade ago. The machine was a relic saved out of defiance or tenderness. He wasn't sure which. He pressed play. Static, the clink of glasses, distant laughter. And then a woman's voice, clear as a bell in an empty church. Good evening, Delancey. The tape hissed, a piano found a key. The woman began to sing. It wasn't a spectacular voice, not the kind that wins televised competitions. It was the kind that pulls your chair closer to the stage without you noticing. Warm, amber, honest, the vowels carried the smoke and sweetness of late nights and cheap bourbon. The melody moved in a small circle, yearnful and sure. Victor leaned against the glass, the city breath, the song breath back. He could see it even with his eyes open, the club long gone now, the low ceiling, the tiny stage, the neon sign that flickered no matter how often the owner swore he'd get it fixed. He could see a woman with a dark bob and a silver dress that was more confidence than fabric. He could see a boy in the back, him, peeking around a pillar he was supposed to be hiding behind. He had promised himself he wouldn't press this play button again. He had promised himself with the hard, clean convictions of a man who thinks he's in charge of the weather. But tonight, 8 notes had walked into a bar in undid years. A waitress with tired eyes had hummed the ghost of a life he'd buried. The song reached the turn he always braced for, the place where the melody skipped a stair and landed somewhere you didn't expect. On the tape, the woman laughed softly, just off mic, and said, "For my boys," before the band found the bridge. Victor's throat tightened in a way money couldn't solve. He stopped the tape before the applause. He always did. His phone flashed on the desk. "Mara, meeting confirmed, 10:30, she accepted." He didn't reply, not yet. He set the recorder down with reverence and walked to the credenza. A drawer slid open to reveal a neat grid of manila folders, each labeled with a life, companies, rivals, allies, problems. He pulled one from the back, the one without a printed tab, the one he never let anyone else file. Inside were 5 photographs, a matchbook from a club on Delancey Street, and a paper program with a list of standards typed in a font that didn't exist anymore. In the top corner of the program, someone had written a title by hand, "Daisy on Delancey." The ink had faded to tea brown. He traced the words with a fingertip that remembered doing the same thing when it was much smaller. Behind him, the city flared as if it had heard a secret. He closed the drawer. In the morning, he would meet a waitress who did not want to be seen and ask her about a song no one was supposed to know. He would do it carefully. He would do it like a man defusing a bomb he'd built himself. Back downtown, Emily tidied the kitchen, checked Daniel's oxygen, turned off the light in the hall, and sank onto the couch with her knees pulled to her chest. The apartment hummed and clicked. A car horn somewhere expressed outrage the way only New York could. She pulled the business card from her apron pocket and turned it over and over like a coin she didn't quite believe was real. On the back, in sharp black ink, a handwritten note she hadn't noticed before. 10:30, don't be late, V. Her pulse kicked. She looked toward the bedroom where Daniel slept, slack-jawed and peaceful. She could do this. She would do this. The worst thing that could happen was humiliation in an expensive office. She'd survived worse. Her phone buzzed one more time, a new message, no name, just a number. "One more thing, do not sing that song tomorrow." She stared at the words until the screen dimmed and went dark. Then she tapped the metronome just once without winding it and listened to the silent swing of a pendulum that didn't move. Morning would come whether she slept or not. When it did, she'd be walking into Hale Tower with a promise taped together out of bills and love. And in some other tower, a man who hated the past would be waiting in a room full of glass, trying not to hear the note that never stops ringing. Emily set an alarm, plugged in her dying phone, and closed her eyes. The metronome, even unwound, remembered how to keep time. Delay equals ones. The glass doors of Hale Tower whispered open with a sigh of air-conditioned perfection. Emily stepped inside, sneakers squeaking against marble so polished it looked like water. Her reflection followed her in the floor, thinner, smaller, a version of herself she didn't recognize. The lobby was a cathedral of power. Chrome columns rose to a ceiling so high it made her dizzy, and the front desk gleamed with the kind of sterility that suggested nothing messy ever happened here. Except lives, maybe. A woman in a fitted gray suit appeared with the efficiency of a chess piece being moved. Her smile was sharp, precise, not quite reaching her eyes. "Miss Carter, I'm Mara. Mr. Hale will see you shortly." "Please, this way." Emily clutched her bag tighter and followed, her heart beat in her ears with every step. Delay equals ones. The elevator ride felt like it lasted a lifetime. When the doors opened, Emily was led into a private lounge, muted gray walls, a tray of bottled water, and a view of Manhattan that made the city look like toy blocks. She was alone for 3 minutes. That was long enough for her to consider bolting. The door opened, but it wasn't Victor Hale. Claudia Bennett swept in, a study in champagne silk and controlled sweetness. Her heels clicked like punctuation, her diamond ring flashed like a weapon. She crossed the room with the kind of poise that came from years of rehearsed entrances. "Emily Carter," she said, her voice as smooth as velvet and just as suffocating. "I've heard so much." Emily stood. "I was told Mr. Hale wanted." Mr. Hale was a very busy man. Claudia's interruption was gentle, almost affectionate. She placed a slim folder on the table. "I handle his delicate opportunities." Emily frowned. "Opportunities." Claudia slid the folder closer. Inside was a glossy brochure, Hale Foundation Annual Gala. Gold script, black backgrounds, photos of last year's event dripping with chandeliers and tuxedos. "This Friday night," Claudia said, "a cause very dear to Victor's heart, and to mine. You'll be working the event." Emily blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "We'd like you to serve as a hostess. Cocktail coordination, light guest assistance, smiling in the right places. You'll be paid, of course." Claudia's smile sharpened generously. Emily crossed her arms. "Why me?" "Because you're authentic." Claudia leaned in, perfume wrapping the air between them. "Victor values authenticity." Emily's throat went dry. "And if I say no?" Claudia's eyes flickered with something colder. Then a donation Hale Media had earmarked for Mount Sinai's pediatric cardiology wing might be redirected. Shame, really. The words landed heavy. Emily's stomach twisted. She pictured Daniel in a hospital bed, wires and tubes, a doctor's bill waiting like a trap. Claudia reached across the table and laid a manicured hand on the folder. "We're not monsters, Emily. We want to help you. This is a partnership." Emily stared at her, then at the brochure. The gala was titled in bold letters, Old New York Nights. The background photos showed a glowing neon sign, Delancey Street Jazz Club. Her breath caught. "That theme," she said quietly. "Who chose it?" Claudia tilted her head, smile never wavering. "Victor. He's very particular about his parties." Emily swallowed hard. "And what exactly do you expect from me?" "Nothing difficult, just don't perform." Claudia's eyes glinted. "No music, no singing, certainly not that little tune you hummed at the bar. Understood?" Emily's jaw tightened. "Why not?" "Because some songs open doors that should stay closed," Claudia said smoothly, standing. "And doors like that tend to slam hard on anyone foolish enough to push them. Delay equals ones." The meeting ended with Claudia handing her a black envelope embossed with Hale's crest. Inside, a contract, legally thick enough to drown in, but one clause was clear, prohibited musical performance, vocal or instrumental in any context. Emily walked out of Hal Tower with the envelope burning a hole in her bag. Outside, the city roared as if nothing had changed, but everything had. Her phone buzzed, a text from Daniel. "How's the Death Star? Did Darth Vader show?" She typed back, "Met the Empress, got a job offer. Lugjet." She hesitated, then typed, "Depends on your definition. Delay equals ones." That night, Emily sat at the kitchen table, the contract spread out beside a stack of unpaid bills. Daniel leaned on the counter, sipping ginger tea. "They're offering to cover your hospital deposit," Emily said flatly, "if I host some party." Daniel's eyebrows rose, strings attached. She nodded. "Don't sing. Especially not Dad's song." Daniel blinked. "To that specific?" "Yeah." He studied her face. "So what are you gonna do?" Emily stared at the contract. The words swam. She felt the velvet noose tighten around her throat. "I'm gonna sign," she whispered, "because I don't have a choice. Delay equals ones." Across town, in a penthouse built of glass and steel, Claudia poured herself a drink and tapped a quick text. "Contract signed. She'll be at the gala." A single checkmark, then a second. No reply. She smiled anyway, raising her glass to the skyline. "Welcome to the game, little waitress. Delay equals wins." The night of the Hale Foundation Gala arrived with the kind of rain that turned Manhattan sidewalks into mirrors. Town cars lined the curb in front of Howe Tower, headlights slicing through the drizzle. Photographers huddled under umbrellas, lenses hungry for the next celebrity arrival. Emily adjusted the black dress they'd given her, simple, elegant, tailored too perfectly to have been chosen at random. She felt like she'd been poured into someone else's life. Her hair was pinned back, her shoes pinched, and the contract she had signed weighed invisible chains around her wrists. "Just smile," Mara, Hale's assistant, murmured as she handed Emily a tray of champagne flutes. "Don't wander, don't improvise, and remember, no singing." The words settled like a knife against Emily's ribs. She forced a nod. "Delay equals wins." The ballroom glittered like a jewel box, chandeliers dripping crystal gold trim winking against marble floors, a live string quartet filling the air with Mozart. Wealth didn't just attend here, it breathed, strutted, demanded to be seen. Victor Hale stood near the stage, expression carved from stone, greeting donors with a handshake that never lingered. Claudia Bennett floated at his side in a silver gown, laughter ringing out like champagne flutes colliding. Every smile she gave was designed, every touch placed exactly where it would be photographed. Emily moved among the guests with her tray, invisible by design. She kept her eyes on the glasses, the carpet, anything but Hale. But she felt his gaze once, just once, from across the room, cold, sharp, but undeniably there. Delay equals ones. 2 hours in, the wine was flowing and the crowd had loosened. A hedge fund executive leaned too far into Emily's personal space, slurring jokes he thought were clever. She slipped away, cheeks burning, and ducked behind a column. That's when Claudia appeared. "Emily," she purred, linking an arm through hers before Emily could step back. "Perfect timing. We need you on stage." Emily froze. On stage. For introductions, Claudia's smile glittered like broken glass. Just a few words about how honored we all are. Authenticity, remember. Emily shook her head. "I'm not." Claudia's grip tightened. "You'll do fine, Victor insists." Emily glanced toward the stage. Hale was across the room, deep in conversation with the senator. He hadn't even looked their way. She understood then this wasn't his idea. This was Claudia's. Delay equals ones. The MC called her name, Miss Emily Carter, one of tonight's gracious hostesses. The spotlight swung, blinding. A polite smatter of applause rose. Emily's knees went liquid. She climbed the steps, heart pounding, and found herself standing behind a gleaming black piano. A microphone waited. The MC whispered, "Say something nice about the night. Keep it short." Emily's voice wavered but held. "Thank you for supporting the foundation. Tonight isn't about luxury. It's about giving children the care they deserve." Polite applause again. She stepped back, relief flooding. But the hedge fund executive from earlier shouted, "Sing something, sweetheart. Let's hear the local talent." The crowd chuckled, voices rising, "Sing, sing." Emily's stomach turned cold. She looked to Claudia at the foot of the stage. Claudia's smile was the sweetest she had ever seen, a smile that said, "Checkmate." Delay equals ones. Emily's hands trembled as she touched the piano. The microphone loomed. The crowd lined in, waiting to be entertained or to laugh if she failed. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, "Never play scared. The notes know." She glanced toward the audience. Daniel was there, thanks to a guest pass. He sat pale but upright, eyes locked on her. He tapped his chest twice, then raised his fingers in a steady beat, a rhythm, a lifeline. Emily inhaled. Her throat wanted to form the opening bars of Daisy on Delancey, but she remembered a clause in her contract, the warning text, "Claudia's Trap." So she pivoted. Her fingers pressed into a different melody, an old jazz standard, safe, harmless, when her father used to whistle while cooking breakfast. The notes spilled into the ballroom, clear and warm. The chatter died, glasses stilled. For the first time that night, the room listened. Her voice followed, low and steady. The night is long, the path is wide, but music finds you where you hide. A hush swept across the gala, even the string quartet sat frozen. Emily's voice wasn't polished by training anymore, but it was honest, raw, it bled truth into every note. When she ended, the silence held for one fragile second before applause thundered through the room. Emily rose from the bench, heart hammering. Delay equals ones. In the back of the hall, Victor Hale stood half in shadow. His glass was untouched, his jaw tight. For a flicker of a moment, something human, something almost tender passed through his expression. Then it was gone. Delay equals ones. Backstage, Claudia's smile was gone. She seized Emily's arm hard enough to bruise. "You weren't supposed to sing," she hissed. "I didn't sing that song," Emily shot back. "Don't get clever. You think applause protects you. It doesn't." Claudia leaned close, breath hot against Emily's ear. "You're playing with fire, darling. And fire's like you get put out." Emily pulled free, chest rising. For once, she didn't feel invisible. She felt dangerous. Delay equals ones. Later, as she slipped out through the service exit, an older woman from the catering staff caught her sleeve. "You dropped this," the woman said, pressing a folded, yellowed sheet of paper into Emily's hand. Emily unfolded it under the streetlight. Music notation, hand-scrawled in faded ink, at the top. "Daisy on Delancey, M.L." Her breath hitched. She looked up, but the woman had already vanished into the rain. Delay equals ones. The yellowed sheet of music weighed heavier than a brick in Emily's pocket. She carried it home like contraband, her umbrella useless against the rain that soaked her hair and plastered her dress to her skin. Inside the apartment, she spread the page on the kitchen table under the weak light of a single bulb. The staff lines swam where the ink had blurred with age. At the top, written in looping hand, "Daisy on Delancey, M.L." Her fingers traced the initials. She whispered them aloud, "M.L." Daniel wheeled himself into the kitchen, blanket around his shoulders. His face lit when he saw the paper. "That's the song." Emily nodded. "Somebody left it for me tonight. I don't know who, but look, M.L. Who's M.L.? Daniel coughed softly, scanning the scroll. "Maybe a composer, a lyricist. You should ask Gus." Emily blinked. "Gus. The record store guy on Bleecker. He knows everything about old jazz. Didn't Dad used to talk about him?" Memories stirred, her father dragging them into Gus's dusty shop, flipping through vinyl, telling half-stories about nights on Delancey Street. Emily grabbed her jacket. "I'll go now," she said. Daniel frowned. "It's after midnight." "Then I'll be awake." Delay equals wins. The bell over the record store door gave a tired jingle as Emily pushed inside. The air smelled of cardboard, dust, and vinyl sleeves. Towers of records loomed like crooked skyscrapers. Behind the counter, Gus Morales, 60s, Cuban-born, with a beard gone mostly silver, looked up from polishing an old trumpet mute. "Well, if it is Carter's kid," he said, voice gravel warmed by a smile. "Haven't seen you since you were yee-high." He gestured knee level. Emily flushed. "Sorry, been busy surviving." "World does that to you." He set down the mute. "So what drags you into my museum this late?" She slid the sheet music across the counter. "Do you know this?" Gus adjusted his glasses, leant close. His face changed. "Where did you get this?" "Someone handed it to me at the Hale Gala." His eyes sharpened. "You were at that too? Damn, okay, listen, this ain't just a tune. This is Marlene Lewis." Emily's pulse jumped. "M.L." Gus nodded. Marley was a singer back in the 80s. Delancey Street Jazz Club was her spot. Voice like velvet, smile that made you swear off lying. She wrote this song herself, never published. It was her signature. Anyone who heard her sing it never forgot. Emily swallowed. What happened to her? Gus sighed, leaning back, vanished. 89. Whole scene went dark overnight. Rumor was she got involved with a rich kid, some family with money enough to erase people. One night she was on stage, next night gone. Emily's mouth went dry. Rich kid who? No one ever said, but folks whispered Hale. The name floated around. She was pregnant when she disappeared. The words cracked open something inside Emily. Her knees wobbled. She gripped the counter. Pregnant, she repeated. Yeah, nobody knows what became of the baby, or babies. Emily's chest squeezed. She thought of her father, the way he avoided questions about the years before she was born, the way he would play Daisy on Delancey with tears he never explained. Do you have a picture of her? She asked. Gus rummaged under the counter, pulling out a worn shoebox of photos. He flipped through until he found one, a black and white snapshot, edges curled, the ink nearly faded. A woman in a sequin dress, laughing into the camera, arm looped around a young man with a crooked grin. The man was unmistakable, Emily's father. Her breath caught. That's my dad. Gus studied her face, then the photo, then back again. His expression shifted from curiosity to shock. Kid, are you telling me? Emily shook her head violently. I don't know anything, but I need to. Delay equals ones across town. Victor Hale sat in his office with the lights off, staring at the same initials on a different piece of paper. M.L. He had known them his whole life. Marlene Lewis, his mother, the scandal no one dared mention in front of him. And now a waitress had walked into his orbit, humming her song. He closed the file with a snap, anger and fear twisting in his gut. Claudia entered without knocking, phone in hand, smile sugar-sweet. You'll want to see this, she said, flipping the screen. A grainy photo of Emily leaving Gus's shop filled the display, sheet music clutched in her hands. The headline draft above it, Waitress digging into Hale family secrets. Claudia's eyes gleamed. She's getting reckless, which makes her easy. Victor's jaw locked. Stay out of this. But Claudia only smiled wider. Darling, I'm already in it. Delay equals ones. Emily spread the photo and sheet music across the table for Daniel. His eyes widened. That's Dad, he whispered, and Marlene Lewis, so what does that make us? Emily shook her head, tears threatening. I don't know, but it means we're in deeper than I thought, and Victor Hale knows something. He has to. Daniel's hand trembled as he pointed at the sheet. Then you need to ask him, play the song in front of him, make him admit it. Emily stared at her brother, then at the fragile paper between them. The ink seemed to breathe, pulling her into a past that refused to stay buried. Delay equals ones. The summons came the next morning, a message from Mara, short and sharp. Mr. Hay requests your presence. 11:00 a.m. AO Tower, no delays. Emily almost deleted it, almost, but Daniel's voice echoed in her head, play the song in front of him, make him admit it. So she went. Delay equals ones. The elevator doors opened on the top floor. This time there was no waiting lounge, no Claudia. Just Mara leading her down a hallway lined with glass offices until she stopped at a set of double doors and pushed them open. Victor Hale stood by the window, skyline spread beneath him like a kingdom he ruled by sheer will. He didn't turn when she entered. Sit, he said. Emily stayed standing. Why am I here? Finally he faced her. The sharpness in his eyes had softened into something worse, calculation threaded with unease. You've been busy, he said. Record shops, old photographs, names that were never meant for your mouth. Emily's jaw tightened. Then maybe you should explain why your mother's initials are on this. She pulled the sheet music from her bag and slid it across his desk. Victor's hand hovered over the paper, fingers trembling before he clenched them into a fist. You shouldn't have that, he said. But I do, Emily's voice rose, and I want answers. Who is Marlene Lewis to you? Victor stared at her for a long moment, then walked to a drawer and pulled out a small cassette tape. He set it on the desk between them. Play it, he said it. Emily picked it up, slipped it into the player beside his desk. Static filled the room, then a woman's voice, warm and low, singing Daisy on Delancey. Emily froze, tears rising unbidden. Halfway through the song, a man's voice joined, laughing softly. "We'll raise them right, Marlene, both of them." Emily's breath caught both. Victor nodded once. Twins, she had twins. Her heart slammed against her ribs. "You're sighing." "I'm saying," he interrupted, "that my mother disappeared in 1989. She was pregnant. I was told one child survived me, but this recording," his eyes locked on hers, "and you humming that melody in a bar, I don't believe in coincidence." Emily staggered back a step, shaking her head. "That's impossible. My father, he raised me, not—" "Your father was in that world," Victor said, his voice low. "I've seen the photos. He was with her, which means either he took you in or she left you with him." Emily's chest constricted. She wanted to scream at him, to deny it, but every piece fell into place like tumblers in a lock. Her father's silence, the tears when he played the song, the way he called her days. "Stop," she whispered, "just stop." Victor stepped closer, his control cracking. "Don't you see, you and I were blood." Delay equals ones. The room spun. Emily gripped the edge of the desk to keep herself upright. "No," she said, "you can't just walk into my life and rewrite it." "Oh, I didn't," Victor snapped, the truth dead. Silence pressed in. The city buzzed outside, uncaring. Emily forced her breathing steady. If this is true, why hide it? Why bury her name? Why erase her song? Victor's face hardened. "Because my father made sure of it. He couldn't let the world know the perfect Hale dynasty began with a jazz singer from Delancey Street. He locked her memory in a vault and told me to forget." "But you didn't forget," Emily said softly. Victor looked at the tape. "No, I never could." Delay equals ones. He turned back to her, something raw in his voice. "Emily, I can protect you, from Claudia, from the press, from anyone who would use this against us. But we need to confirm it. A DNA test. Quiet, discreet." Emily stared at him, torn between fury and something else, an ache she didn't want to name. "You're asking me to let you decide who I am." "I'm asking you to let the truth decide," he said. Her throat closed. She thought of Daniel in the hospital bed, of bills piling, of the weight of the music sheet in her hands. And now this man, this stranger who might not be a stranger at all, telling her entire life had been rewritten before she even knew how to read. Delay equals ones. Neither of them noticed the tiny red light glowing in the corner of the office. A recording device planted by Claudia earlier that morning. In her own suite across the building, Claudia slipped on headphones and smiled as she listened. "Well, well," she whispered, "the billionaire and the waitress siblings. That's a headline worth more than diamonds." Delay equals ones. Victor reached across the desk, his hand hovering just above the sheet music. "I failed to protect her," he said, voice low. "I won't fail you. Whatever happens next, we do this together." Emily stared at him, tears burning her eyes. "Then start," she said, "by protecting Daniel." Victor's gaze softened just a fraction. He gave a single nod. Delay equals ones. The headlines detonated at sunrise. Waitress claims to be Hale heiress. Victor Hale's secret sister, a family scandal unearthed. From coffee refills to corporate thrones. The photos were worse. Grainy shots of Emily outside Gus's record shop, clutching the sheet music. Another of her at the gay piano, mouth open mid-song. And the worst, a zoomed-in image of her hand brushing Victor as she passed him a glass, spun into a tabloid caption, "Too close for comfort." Emily woke to her phone buzzing nonstop. When she saw the screen, her stomach dropped out from under her. Daniel sat up in bed, pale and furious. "They're saying you're sleeping with him." Emily choked. "What? No, Daniel, it's Claudia. She leaked it. She's twisting everything." But Daniel was already clutching his chest, breath shallow, eyes glazed. The monitor on his nightstand beeped frantically. His voice cracked. "It hurts." Delay equals ones the ambulance ride blurred. Emily held Daniel's hand, whispering steady counts with every breath, 1-2, 1-2, while paramedics hooked lines into his arm. At Mount Sinai, doctors rushed him through triage. Words like arrhythmia and critical instability flew through the air. Emily heard them as if underwater. A surgeon pulled her aside. "We need to operate soon, but the deposit has doubled. Security risk. Press outside. We need assurance before we proceed." Emily's vision tunneled. "You're saying you won't help him unless—" The doctor avoided her eyes. "We're saying this surgery is complicated. We need financial clearance. Without it, we can stabilize, but—" Her knees nearly buckled. "He doesn't have time." Delay equals 1 hours later. Emily stood in the hospital corridor, reporters pressing against the glass doors outside, shouting questions. Her phone buzzed with Mara's name. "Mr. Hale is in meetings," Mara said stiffly. "He cannot speak publicly until the situation is controlled." Emily's chest constricted. "Meetings? My brother is dying." "Mr. Hale believes silence protects you both." The line went dead. Emily leaned against the wall, sliding to the floor. Silence, always silence. That was Hale's answer to everything. Delay equals one's Claudia arrived like perfume and poison. She breezed into the waiting room in a silver coat, paparazzi bulbs flashing as if she had called them herself. She spotted Emily slumped in the corner and approached with a look of false sympathy. "You poor thing," Claudia cooed, crouching beside her. "So young, so overwhelmed. I warned you, did I? Some doors aren't meant to be opened." Emily glared through tears. "You did this." Claudia tilted her head. "I reported the truth. What the world makes of it, that's their choice." She slipped a paper onto Emily's lap. "Sign this, a public statement. You'll admit you fabricated the connection. In return, the foundation will miraculously cover your brother's surgery." Emily stared at the page, a lie dressed as mercy. "You're a monster," Emily whispered. Claudia's smile didn't falter. "I'm a survivor. You want Daniel to survive too, don't you?" Emily tore the paper in half and shoved it back into Claudia's hands. Delay equals one's Daniel's heart monitor shrieked from inside the ICU. Nurses sprinted. Emily's world narrowed to the sound of flat beeps and shouting doctors. She pressed her hands against the glass, sobbing, powerless. "Hold on," she whispered. "Please hold on." Behind her, Claudia leaned against the wall, arms folded, watching like someone waiting for her flight to be called. Delay equals ones. Then came the shuffle of worn shoes. Gus Morales, the record shop owner, appeared in the hallway, out of breath, clutching a small cassette tape. "Kid," he panted, thrusting it into Emily's hands. "I found it, the live recording. Delancey Club 89, last show she ever sang. Listen to the end." Emily fumbled it into her phone's adapter. The tape hissed, then Marlene Lewis's voice filled her ears, soft, trembling, but strong. She sang Daisy on Delancey, the lullaby Emily had known her whole life. At the end, a pause, then Marlene's voice, breaking with emotion. "For my twins, Victor and Daisy." Emily's knees gave out. Daisy. Her father had called her Days. It wasn't just a nickname, it was her name. Delay equals one's in Hell Tower. Victor sat alone in his boardroom, reporters howling outside the building. Claudia's leak scandal had investors panicking, the board demanding explanations, but all he could hear was his mother's voice in his head. "For my twins." He slammed his hand on the table. He couldn't stay silent anymore. Delay equals ones. The press conference wasn't scheduled. It wasn't cleared with the board. It wasn't even announced until Victor Hale himself strode into the old Delancey Street Jazz Club, restored now as a boutique venue, and told the staff to unlock the doors. By evening, the place was packed. Reporters, cameras, curious locals who remembered the neon sign that had once flickered there. Emily sat in the front row, Daniel's wheelchair beside her, ivy line still taped to his arm. He was pale but awake, his heartbeat fragile against the machines they'd rolled in with him. Claudia hovered near the back, flanked by her PR team, smug in a gown that gleamed like armor. She whispered to a reporter, already crafting her spin. The lights dimmed. Victor Hale walked onto the stage and placed an old cassette player on the piano. He didn't sit. He didn't smile. He looked out at the crowd, the cameras, the expectant world. "My name is Victor Hale," he said, voice steady, amplified through the mic. "You know me as a businessman. Tonight, you'll know me as a son." A murmur swept the room. Victor pressed play. The tape hissed, then filled the air with Marlene Lewis's voice, low, rich, aching with soul. She sang Daisy on Delancey, and the room fell silent. It was like the city itself held its breath. At the bridge, Marlene's voice cracked with laughter, then softened. "For my twins, Victor and Daisy." The recording clicked off. Victor gripped the piano, his knuckles white. "My mother's name was Marlene Lewis. For years her memory was erased, hidden, branded shameful because she wasn't born into money, because she loved music more than power. My father buried her story to protect his empire." He paused, then looked at Emily. "But she had two children. One of them was me. The other," his voice caught, "the other is my sister, Emily Carter." Gasps rippled, cameras flashed. Claudia's eyes went wide, then narrowed like knives. Emily's pulse thundered. She hadn't expected him to say it, not publicly, not with the world watching. Victor continued, "This is the truth, not rumor, not scandal. And if anyone here wants to call it shameful, then let it be on my name, not hers and not my sister S. All delay equals ones." Claudia surged forward, her PR team trailing. "This is outrageous," she hissed, her voice caught on live microphones. "She's nothing but a fraud. You're throwing away everything for a waitress with a sob story." Victor turned to her, eyes like steel. "No, Claudia, I'm throwing away you." The crowd erupted, gasps, shouts, cameras flashing faster. Victor pulled a folder from his jacket and dropped it onto the piano. "Inside are records of your leaked contracts, payments to tabloids, fabricated statements. You've been using my name to sell lies." He faced the reporters. "Effective immediately, Claudia Bennett is no longer associated with Hale Media, my family, or my life." Claudia's face went pale. The reporters swarmed her, shouting questions, cameras blinding. Her perfect smile cracked. She turned on her heel and shoved through the crowd, fleeing in a storm of flashes. The Empress of Spin had been dethroned in real time. Delay equals ones. Silence hung after Claudia's exit, raw and trembling. Victor turned back to Emily. "Sing it," he said softly into the mic. "Sing it for her, for us." Emily's throat tightened. Every instinct told her to shrink, to hide, but Daniel's hand touched hers, weak but sure. His whisper barely carried, "Do it, Em, please." She sat at the piano. Her fingers rested on the keys like they had been waiting their whole life. She closed her eyes, inhaled, and began. The first notes of Daisy on Delancey poured into the club. This time she didn't hum, she sang. Her voice wavered, cracked, then steadied, stronger with each bar. The melody wrapped around the room, seeped into the walls, echoed in the rafters. It was grief and love and survival stitched into sound. Tears slid down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. By the final verse, her voice broke completely, but she didn't stop. The crowd, hardened reporters, cynical donors, were crying with her. Daniel's head rested against the chair, his eyes wet but shining. Victor stood behind her, a hand on her shoulder, his own eyes rimmed red. When the last chord faded, silence fell again. Then applause thundered, wild, unstoppable, shaking the walls of the club. Delay equals ones. The surgery fund overflowed within 24 hours. Donations poured in from strangers moved by the story, by the song. Daniel's operation went ahead within the week, successful. The doctors called it a miracle of timing. Victor stepped away from deals worth billions, cutting ties with board members who wanted silence over truth. For the first time, he wasn't chasing profit, he was protecting family. Emily returned to the Blue Lantern, not as a waitress, but as a performer. On opening night, the sign outside glowed, "A Night for Daisy." Victor sat in the front row, a quiet presence. Daniel, thinner but alive, tapped his chest to keep time. Delay equals one's Emily sang again, voice strong now, filling the room. The audience leaned forward, spellbound. When the last note faded, she whispered into the mic. Some songs don't just belong to the past, they belong to the blood, to the ones we lose and the ones we find. Tonight I found mine. Her tears fell freely, and for once they didn't hurt. Delay equals ones the tabloids had their story, but not the one Claudia wanted. She vanished from the city's spotlight, contracts shredded, reputation scorched. The world had little sympathy for a queen who built her throne on lies. Emily and Victor carried a different legacy forward, not an empire of media, but a name restored, a mother remembered. Daisy on Delancey was played again, not as scandal, but as truth. And in the quiet after, the city seemed to hum along, like even New York knew the song at last. Tears flowed, but they healed.